Hey everybody. So we're going to be doing something a little bit different for prep time. I wanted to offer some of my students a um, a breakdown or more of a brainstorming for election related topics that I presented them, but I decided to share that with everybody. Doing it during my time off where I'm not officially working, and so let me explain how I'm going to be doing this. So I'm going to be doing this screen share here, and if you're watching this later and you want to focus in on one of the topics and not all of them, what I did at the bottom here was I color coded these tabs. And so voter ID is in red, Electoral College is in yellow, felon voting rights is in green, ranked choice voting is in blue, and vote by mail is like this purple. And so what you can do is you can skim ahead until you see which tab I am on, so you know that you're focusing on one of those topics and not necessarily any of the others that you need. Okay. I also am using the Google Sheets spreadsheet in order to do my preparation. Now, the reason for this is so I can actually build upon this throughout the debate. What I do is I devote one column for each speech, and we're on the very first speech. It's what's known as the first affirmative constructive, also known as the 1AC. All right. And so this is going to be in the type of debate that we're doing, a 5-minute speech. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare the arguments in order from top to bottom. Okay. And so now that becomes the outline that you can use when you are. Delivering your speech or recording your speech for this particular debate. Okay. But I'm only going to be doing the first affirmative for each of these topics. Now, each of these topics, if you're thinking it's kind of like, well, why isn't it covering the opposing arguments? It's like that'll come later at a different time. But for right now, just focusing on the affirmative. Okay. I put the wording of the topic right up top, but let's just get into it. Okay, so identification should be required to vote. Now, this first time through, I'm going to take a little extra time explaining why we go in the order that we do and what is happening. So you might need to go through one time, or listen to this and then apply it to the others. Okay. So when you very, very first start, you really need to, what I always recommend is an attention getter. Okay. So something like in the news, something very recent. You can even say, because right now this is being recorded a mere 2 weeks away from the midterm elections in the United States. I would say it's like election season is upon us, and it is time for us to think about not only who we're going to vote for, but how we're going to vote. And I recommend that identification should be required to vote. And so, and that's a nice little way to just get started. Okay. Then what you do is you have to think about how you're going to walk your audience through from beginning to end. Okay. How are you going to make it so they follow you from a state of not, you can't assume that they know anything about this topic. How do you start somebody from, a point where they don't know anything about voter ID, and then by the end of it, they are in agreement with you? Remember, the affirmative means that you are taking a stand. This is not just background information. It's not just the history of voter identification or anything like that. You aren't giving both sides. On the affirmative, you are giving the pro side, the affirmative side, the proposition side. So you got to make sure that everything is nice and consistent and clear. Okay. In order to have that clarity, the first thing that you want to do is what we call an interpretation. Okay. Now you're also going to notice that I'm going to start. I'm going to label these things. I'm going to have like these. I'm going to bullet point them or number them, or in this case, letter them. Right. So I would do a little preview and say, first, we're going to do a little interpretation of this resolution. And so the what I recommend always is for you to have a type of resolution. Okay. So like when you are, what I mean by that is that all debates can be broken down into different types of resolutions. And the most famous, the most popular different types are questions of fact, questions of value, or questions of policy. And this one is a question of policy. Okay. And so notice on what I do is I provide subpoint A, and then like, and so like this is a policy resolution, and now I'm going to provide reasons why. All right. So, for instance, the reason the word should implies action. Okay. Maybe I'll just leave it at that if I want to. And so, or you could also say that current events revolve around questions of policy. A decent argument, not necessarily anything, not automatic, but there you go. See that? So what you're seeing here is that you have subpoint A, and then you have two reasons that support subpoint A. I would skip a space, and I'm going to do subpoint B. So first, you do the type of policy, and now let's talk about some definitions. Okay. When we're talking about definitions in a debate, you want to focus on the words in the resolution. Okay, so like identification and required to vote are two different things. So and this one becomes um, pretty cool because you start. What you're doing is you're leading your audience into your in your final interpretation. So when we talk about identification, I'm just gonna make that shorter. Identification. We're gonna talk about a national ID card. So voter ID card, voter card. All right. So that you could explain what that means. I was doing a little bit of research before you actually start outlining things. You might want to do just a little bit of reading, just give yourself a little bit of background on what you want to do. But notice that the word identification is in the definitions. Now, some things that you are will be tempted to define are words that are going to come up later in the debate, but resist that temptation. Okay, you could define those later under the interpretation. You are starting with this resolution, and you want to unpack these words, not the words that you're going to use in the near future, the words that are right there presented to you that both debaters have to um, provide. Okay. So, and you can even include a source. And now when I'm doing sources, what I'm going to just put these little parentheses here. And what I'm saying here is that I'm expecting my audience members right now, the people that are watching me right now, if you are preparing this, you need to go and find a source. Okay. I will show you some examples of that, but I'm not going to do the actual research method while I'm in front of you. I'm going to focus on the outline. So a lot of this stuff is just me brainstorming. Okay. So, and then you could also do required to vote. And that would mean that, uh, what? Citizens cannot receive a ballot without identification. That fair enough. Okay. So there you go. So there's just really short resolutions, so you don't need a whole lot of definitions. All right. Now, after you do the definition, the third part is going to be your plan, also known as your thesis. Okay. Now, this is where you might want to actually do a little bit of research. And what I recommend when you're actually trying to find a plan text is to go to this one place that I recommend is called GovTrack. It's govtrack.us. That's an important thing to do. Let me double check and make sure. All right. Uh, uh, uh. Hold on. Let me see if I could do this. I'm sorry, I'm getting a copy that. Sorry, somebody sent me a message. I wanted to respond to him. Let me see here. Oh, wait. Okay, it should be. Oh, somebody's saying that they can't. 12:30. Huh. Interesting. Interesting. Let me make sure that I got make sure I got the right link out to people here. Should be working. Yep. Okay. Well, hopefully. Oh, looks like my internet is a little bit off too. Okay. Anyways, govtrack.us, it provides you with legislation that's been proposed and it's being offered. All right. And so what I did was I put in voter identification in the search bar. All right. So take a look. This is what the homepage looks like. I put up voter identification in the search bar and it brings up this page right here. Um, let me let me just double check. All right. Okay. Um, so when I did voter identification, look, there's a bunch of legislation. They give you the categories, but I like going straight down here and taking a look at some of the bills and resolutions. I even like going to the see more option here. It gives you an advanced search, and you could go to things that have been proposed right now. Now, it's important that you select things that have not actually been put into law. Let me let me make this a little larger. Uh, so the whole vaccine passports require like that's a little bit too much. I might just go right here. The Voter ID Act, um, filer vote, save voters, protecting American voters. And so the one that seems just straightforward right here. All right. So Bruce Westerman of Arkansas has proposed the Voter ID Act, requires states to conduct post-election audits for elections. Okay, that's a little different. To provide attestations, so it's not doesn't look like it's a like you have to provide voter identification itself. So as you can see, like maybe it's not always the best, way to do things is to go with with this one right here. You could. So I was looking in the House. Maybe we will also look in the Senate. So that's the HR. That's the S, right? And so let's take a look here. Voter ID Act, promoting election by voter identity. I think this one might be a little closer. Rick Scott of Florida. And so you can take a look at the full text, right? And so you're scrolling down, it's not incredibly long, like some bills are just ridiculously long. Okay. So this one, individuals, voters, other than in person, current and valid. Take a look. So identification defined. Look at that. Very nice. Current means current, any of the following an ID issued by state or unit of local government in a state, a U.S. passport, military ID, identification issued by a tribal government. So those are the four things that count. Now, listen, you get to define these things. So if you want to do that, then go for it. But for the sake of just making things easy, I'm going to take that. My plan is going to do you know what? So that notice though, I'm going to make sure that this is not really all right. All right. So I just removed the formatting of that one. So you could use a plan that somebody else has promoted. All right. You could go to GovTrack, find something. It could, and I bet you anything, the Electoral College, felon voting rights, all of them have some sort of legislation that has been proposed. And you could just say, I am going to defend that. All right, that's fine. And now, so what that does though is just make sure that it's consistent with your definitions here. Okay, and so on if I was going to do, but I kind of like I wanted to do something other than that. I wanted to say that. So let's say that instead of that, I'm going to say the federal government should provide a national voter ID card upon registration. What that means is, like, I was looking this up a little bit, and there, like, here, I'll go over here, that there's actually people have been proposing actually having a voter, wait, is it this one? Oh yeah, I almost skipped this. And so there's different levels of voter ID. You could have photo, you could have non-photo. Everything that was listed in Rick Scott's plan was photo, and maybe you're like, I don't want to do the photo one, and you could do these other ones. You know what I mean? That might be alternatives. Okay, and there's non-strict and strict levels. So you have a lot of options. You have a lot of choices when it comes to what plan that you're going for. When it comes to the for whatever you're proposing for your plan, okay? And so this one, I'm actually proposing that the federal government provides you with an actual card with when you register, and so that national, and then what you could do is that's your plan thesis, and what you can say is like a mandate is that a national card ensures the right to vote in any state the citizen resides. See? Now what you're doing is you're making it so that this identification, and you could also say any state um, issued ID also qualifies. See that? And so you're kind of outlining what the plan is, what you are, what you're providing for as far as a plan. Okay, um, here we go. So and then the last thing that you want to do is what we call the criterion. Now, criterion is how do you know who wins at the end? Now, I'm just going to make it nice and simple. Just use this word, net benefits. Net benefits means that, and you can explain this, is that if the proposed plan produces more benefits and disadvantages, vote affirmative. So you're just saying that, like, listen, I'm going to propose this plan, the national voter ID card, and so if having that card is good, vote for me. If it is not good, vote for my opponent. My opponent has the responsibility coming up with disadvantages, and there you go. This entire section right here. Take a look at all that. Look at all this information you have, and we've just done definitions. Okay, we've just had some clarification about what we're talking about. Notice I haven't really made any arguments necessarily. I've just sort of outlined the approach that I'm going to do, and now I'm going to make some advantages. All right, and so what I would do is I'd say advantage one, voter confidence. This is where this is the art of debate, where you kind of like come together with some different ideas about what you can do, and as how to word it and things like that. Okay. All right. Let me just double check something. All right. Okay. Oh, I see what's going on. There you go. All right. So, like, you got to think about, like, why would having voter identification work? Now there might be. Let's take a look, and Like, so I have that, but I also have like Google News, really simple. Uh, all right. So maybe one of the more common arguments that people make is voter fraud, right? Well, let's take a look. Unleashes the voter fraud squad. Voter fraud busts fall apart in court after video of arrests emerge. Okay. What those 19 Florida arrests. So in Florida, there was a bunch of arrests. So fraud claims. Bolsonaro in Brazil is calling fraud. This one shows that there is no voter fraud. Granderson. Okay, voter fraud case. So what? So if you wanted to do the voter fraud argument, you have to find evidence that there is a problem, right? And so the issue with that is that it's really difficult to find widespread voter fraud. The evidence, like if you're watching this and you have some, please post it. I would love to see that evidence, but I've done plenty of research on this, and it is really difficult to find voter fraud to the level that it actually affected outcomes of elections. And so, see, this woman was arrested for voter fraud, and now she's suing them. And the charges were dropped afterwards, right? And so, let's do voter fraud evidence. Like, I'm actively searching for it, right? And it's like, nope. Cruz was saying that the claims of fraud were reckless before. Even Trump knowingly made false claims about voter fraud. False voter fraud claims. Okay, let's take a look at Texas. Texas voter fraud charges against that was dismissed. You'd think that Texas might have some good stuff. Charges are dropped. Like, there's nothing that's providing is like, this is how much voter fraud. Now maybe we have to go to the internet, right? So voter fraud evidence. Now the problem with the internet at large is that here we go. Debunking the voter fraud myth. 2,000 mules. Oh, that's does this document. Okay, documentary about 2,000. This is Reuters. Pretty exhaustive fact check. So voter fraud map. That's one looks like it is the most. Now the thing is, if you find one piece of evidence and there's a bunch of other stuff that isn't providing you support, then that's a problem. Across the United States, 1,000 proven instances of voter fraud. 1,300, right? 1,400. 1,400. So let's take a look. Cri 1,000 criminal convictions. So there's 1,000. Search the database. So I want to look at the database a little bit closer, right? So let's take a look. About 1,400 different examples of voter fraud. Now, for fraudulent use of absentee ballots. So 2022. So now, was this 1,300 in 1 year? Impersonation at the polls. So there you go. Maybe if you want to do that one. So now we're going, and so take a look at how many happened in 1 year, right? And so this looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 per page. So we got 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, like 40 cases. Wisconsin had 4. Texas had 4, right? It's like, this is the problem, is that the amount of voter fraud that there is happening doesn't by itself provide a really compelling argument why we should have this big, broad policy. Okay. And like when you start getting into um, way back when, let's take a look at all the way to the last. When did they start doing this? So they had, so this was from 1982 until now. So over 40 years, there has been less than 1,400 cases of voter fraud documented. Heritage Foundation is a conservative think tank. They have a vested interest to find as many as they can to make these voter fraud claims. And the best that they can do is 1,400 over 40 years. That is not really a compelling case for voter fraud, but you can still do voter confidence. All right, because voter confidence is something that's a little bit more attitudinal. All right, so that's why I'm going for the voter confidence. Now the thing is, when you're doing this, you have to do your stock issues. So the first thing that you do is harms. Now, in order to learn what stock issues are, there is a video lecture in Proto Communications called Stock Issues. You want to go review that. Okay, I'm going to give you a little bit of breakdown right here. Inherency, solvency, and then we're going to add something called impacts. Okay, so this is where you do the brainstorming part of it. So under harms, you could say that voter confidence is low. Okay. Now the reason I'm saying that is because do you think that you could find a source for that? Yes, you can. I bet you I can. Let's just do this. Voter confidence. Okay. Okay, voter confidence unsteady. When was that? That was yesterday. Time to distrust. This one, I think it seems to imply like it's trying to boost voter confidence. It might have some stats on how low voter confidence is, right? In a time of distrust. Take a look. Uh-huh. I'm going past the voter fraud stuff. So you could do something really easy, Command F. I'm just doing confidence. So New Hampshire Special Committee on Voter Confidence, that it might give you a sample. So committee's stated goal is to identify causes of decline in voter confidence. So it does say that there is a low voter confidence. Here you go. So you have some good data right there, right? And so what you could do is just boom, I'm copying the URL, and there you go. All right. And now you have your source. And when you are preparing the speech, you could actually highlight, copy, paste like a section of that and actually read it. And that now becomes part of your speech, right? It takes up time for you to do it. Now, the harms is like, what is the problem? The problem is voter confidence. Why is there low voter confidence? Is that there is people just believe the system is corrupt. Okay. And so this is where you can have a source right here where it's like maybe you have, so in this source, I'm not going to go do the same research because I think that's a little too boring, right? So you could do, and this might be testimonials. Whereas before, this first source that I had under harms is actual statistical evidence. This one could be like testimonials of what people believe and why they think it is, right? And so the best testimonials for this topic would be ones where people think that you can just vote um, without without being registered or without being a resident, or that there are uh, that there are non-citizens that are voting. Those things become into right, and so voter ID. So see how like this is the problem, this is the cause, the inherency, and this is why voter ID will increase confidence. So now, and therefore, you would do something. You'd have a your source could be about like how many Americans are calling for identification, right? So, but remember though, I'm not doing all the research right now, but that's what your job is as a debater, is to fill that in with actual evidence. So the time it will take you to do it will be really important. And so why is this important? That's what impacts mean is voter confidence is critical to democracy. Now, I love the impact arguments, because the impact arguments, when you find a source for that, now it could be a source, and could be like philosophical, but you can also do your own what we call analytical arguments. So analytics in debate means that you're not citing a source, you're just making rational, logical arguments. Okay. And I think, and you are allowed to do that. It's not like there's some sort of rule that every single subpoint that you have needs to have a source citation. The Washington Post on October 10th, 2022 said that Democrats have this level of confidence and Republicans have that level of confidence. That's great, but it does not need to be that pattern every single time. Okay. My apologies. You could do something that's just analytical. Okay. That's what we call it. Here we go. Okay. So now there we go. And now the from the attention getter down through your criterion in the first section right here, that should be about 1 minute. Okay. This advantage should be about 2 minutes. Okay. Like it should take you a couple of minutes to get through that whole thing. And that means on advantage 2, you have another 2 minutes to do a completely different advantage. Now, on confidence is one thing, but I thought there was some really good stuff right here. So voter ID. And this one's also a really cool. So I just looked up what Connect Us. I have no idea what Connect Us Fund is. I'm not even going to cite them. I'm just using them for inspiration for different ideas, right? So voter ID laws provide a reliable form of identification to use. Take a look at this. Paperwork makes it easy to apply for jobs, evidence for age of address. And so now you can have like voter ID. I don't know. Living benefits. Okay. So, and then you do the same thing. Now I'm just going to do H. I'm going to do I. Remember, these are the stock issues. All right. And I'm going to do an exclamation part for that one. So for H, that's the harms. Okay. That's the problem. And so, let's see. Let's kind of scavenge this. When provides. You need a picture on a car. Okay. So you can skip and go. So like ID is a ID is a requirement for basic living. So that's like the inherency of the cause. So what's the problem that it's like maybe Americans Without ID experience barriers. Now, okay, I don't know the full story behind that, but I think that it makes enough sense on face that I could do some research. Okay, um, uh, living without ID. There's a Quora. Exclude life without ID, Privacy International. Uh, can make life very difficult. I might go to that Privacy International right there. Homeless are trapped in a vicious cycle. Oh, so maybe this is more of like a homelessness advantage that even if you're homeless, that you can get identification. That's really interesting. So I might do like so my source might be about houseless or homeless people. Okay, and it's and then see what's happening. I'm building something where I brainstorm and then I build it and I research and keep going back and forth, right? So I can find another source on the difficulties, like what are yeah, and then so solvency is that a national ID um, is available to all citizens. So like, okay, so getting a passport requires is a cost that might be something that you is just untenable for some people. Getting other forms of identification might require an address. Getting a driver's license requires you go through a test. You know what I mean? It's like a tribal land identification means that you have to, prove membership. A military means that you have to enlist. All these things have certain barriers, whereas the voter ID, all you have to do is register. All you have to do is be a citizen, and houseless people are citizens. Okay, and so what that might do is it might therefore open opportunities. And it was even listed there, right? So example would be jobs, etc. You know what I'm saying? And so now you have two advantages. One of them is specific to voting, but the other one is like just like a larger one about living in general. See that? And now is if you spend 2 minutes explaining the living benefits to having an ID and 2 minutes explaining the benefits to voter confidence, that is 4 minutes, and you could leave the remainder of that time just for the plan and stuff like that, or it would be at the beginning. See? And now you filled 5 minutes, and it's nice and structured. It has sources, it has all the stock issues, it tells a story from beginning to end, all that sort of stuff. Okay. And so I'll even come back to this one, and I'll even deliver it for you. Okay. All right, let's move on to the Electoral College. Oh, let's see a comment here. All right. Oh, listen, I can give a copy to anyone that requests it. So I will give one. You know what? I can do that. And so watch this. I can just share um, anyone with a link. I'm just going to let you be a viewer. All right. Boom. Here you go. Anyone can jump on and take a look if you want. All right. There you go. Sweet. Okay, let's take a look at the Electoral College one now. All right. Now remember, oh, look at you. You are the anonymous unicorn. That's you right there. Excellent. Okay. We should abolish the Electoral College. Okay, so remember, you want to have the attention getter. Now, I'm just doing AG for attention getter. The Electoral College, I would say the easiest attention getter is that there's only been, I think it's 3 times. I think there's only been 4 times, 3 times. I think it's 4 times. There's only been 4 times in U.S. history where the popular vote went contrary to the Electoral College, but it is becoming more and more frequent in our modern age. So I stand in affirmation that we should abolish the Electoral College. Go ahead and steal that. Okay. If you like it, go for it. It could be better. I don't doubt it. All right. You might be brilliant and you can make it better. Go for it. But there is a perfectly fine attention getter. Here we go. We have our interpretation. Uh, Now, remember, the interpretation is for these words in the resolution and the resolution itself. Okay, here we go. Perfect. Nice, nice, nice. All right. So the interpretation, subpoint A for the interpretation is the type of resolution. Now, all of these are policy types. Um, so don't overthink it. Okay. It has the word should in it. Um, and uh, abolish requires a policy, specifically a constitutional amendment. Okay. Abolish. That's funny. I'm just going to leave it though. Okay. B, definitions. Okay. For definitions, the first definition would be abolish. So this one might you could lead them a little bit. Is like replace with popular vote. Really straightforward. And so what we call this in debate is a contextual definition, all right? In the context of the Electoral College, abolishing it means that you would be replacing with something else. And the most likely replacement would be the popular vote. Now, the Electoral College, it is so I'm going to make sure I keep my hashtags in place. Electoral College, it is the system. Now, I'm just making this up, but you can find. Let's not make it up then. Let's just go right here. All right. Electoral College. A process. Yeah. Yeah. So I was right on the right track. A system for electing the president of the United States. That's funny. Not wrong, but still funny. Okay, so a system for electing the president of the United States. There you go. You can be more specific if you want to be a little bit more formal. If you want to if you want to cite a source, like a definition from a dictionary or an encyclopedia, go for it. That's fine. It sounds great. Okay, but here we go. We are going to propose our plan in subpoint C. Now, this is where I go back to my govtrack.us, and I'm going to put in Electoral College. Protect, well, we don't want to protect it, right? So that if you had conspiracy to obstruct the electoral count, oh, wow. Clarify. Okay. So I'm going to go to, and I'm just going to do, instead of having all of these, I'm going to do just the House of Representatives. Conspiracy to obstruct, what? That doesn't sound right. To clarify the county electoral votes, no. And Presidential Transition Improvement Act. That one sounds maybe, you know what? We might need to do this one. And the reason we need to do those, because I think we need to do a constitutional amendment, right? You can't just pass a law. Violent insurrection. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about you know what? I'm just gonna so see the HRes means the House resolution. And it may be it might be so okay, it might be hard to find one. San Joaquin Valley College. You see some of the ridiculous things that, well, it's not ridiculous. It's just ridiculous in our context. I'm sure there's a very good reason why San Joaquin deserves recommendations and accommodation, accolades and stuff like that. All right. Yeah, I'm not seeing really good stuff here. So let's do Electoral College Amendment. Okay, so the 12th Amendment comes into play. Here we go. HJ Res. Okay. Oh, maybe I was just wrong on that one. So let's just do that. So you take a look at this. See how a little bit of research can really help? Boom. HJ Res. Ah, there we are. Okay. This is the most direct way to do it. Steve Cohen from Tennessee says a direct vote. All right. And so and take a look. Now you don't have to write anything, right? Just a little bit of research and you have a fully constructed like professionally written. You don't have to agree with it. That's not what I'm talking about, but just a proposal that you don't have to do. Oh, it even has a time frame. All right, that the first day of January following ratification. So whenever it's ratified, it'll be doing that. Oh wow. Oh, but there's a 7 year thing. Okay. Okay. So let's just. I might be wrong, and please don't be upset if I'm wrong, but I think it's just popular vote. And so there you go. The plan could be the House uh, Judiciary Resolution. Text the resolution. So like I want to look and see what that is. Anyways, so there's your plan. You can if you wanted to include some details from it, don't go overboard with it, right? You want this first section to only be a minute long, really. And so, oh, sorry, let me get that comment down. My bad. All right, there you go. Okay, so there you go. And then again, so this one doesn't need to be any different. Net benefits. Remember, net benefits just means if there are uh, if plan good, vote AF. If bad, vote neg. All right, keep it simple, everybody. Obviously, you want to have a little bit more, a better sort of verbiage that you're using for that one. Okay, so here we go. Advantage. So advantage one. Let's see here. What would be the uh, so so right now, what is the biggest complaint that people have for? Let me get rid of these voter ID ones right here. Okay, and so let's so abolish electoral college. And so I'm doing this under Google News so I could get like limit the amount of results I get to something that's like maybe has some sort of editorial oversight on it. Um, and so let's take a look here. Oh, unamendable. That would be good on the neg that you can't amend it. But there you go. Should it be abolished? Claremont Courier. Interesting. Okay. So let's just call this the voice of the people. Okay. So remember, we're talking about stock issues, right? So we have harms for the first one is that people's voices are not being heard. And so you'd say something like 3 times in the last, I think it's 25 years. Electoral College versus popular vote. Oh, look at that. We have 63% say, oh, that's good too. Pew Research. That ain't bad. Pew Research, all they do is stats. Okay. So, listen, you need to You need to double check me on this because I'm not very confident that I'm right on that one. I think I'm pretty darn close. I think twice, Trump no, Trump didn't win the last time, so it was George Bush and then Trump. So 2 times in the last 25 years. Um, years, Electoral College. Uh, so like there's been a couple times in my lifetime that the Electoral College, the winner of the Electoral College was not the winner of the popular vote, and they went on to the presidency. And so you could say there's like 3 times total. And again, if it's 3 or 4, I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time fact checking myself right now because that detail isn't as important as it's happened and it's happening more recently, right? In the most recent election, the winner of the popular vote did win the Electoral College, but it was close, and there was a whole bunch of turmoil, and there's claims about like fraud and stuff like that, and so uh, inherency. So this one is really easy. The Electoral College um, outweighs the popular vote. This is just the status quo. Now, this one you could actually do for your source is more of like a history lesson or an explainer. And so you could actually, you're just explaining what the Electoral College does and how it works, right? So solvency, um, oh, you say like, listen, like there's, oh, one other thing that you could also say that, was it, what did we just see? 65% think the popular vote should be the way. All right. That was the Pew research. I think I still have it right here. See that? So I'm going to do something fancy here. I'm going to put in a little link. So now you could just click on that if you wanted to. All right. Um, nice, nice. All right. Popular vote works. It's like you could get a little cheeky. Nowhere else uses the Electoral College. Okay. Um, uh, uh, you could get a little analytical. Remember, I said analytical is where you're just making sense and logical arguments without necessarily citing sources. You talk about the will of the people. When you get to the impact, it's like we could have, and so and see, notice how the impact is almost always the inverse of the harms. And that should be heard, not hearse. It sounds a little. Also, keep in mind that the only reason I'm doing this is because this is the affirmative, right? And so there's plenty of negative arguments, but we're just not doing that in this particular session. All right, impact. People's voices are being heard. Why is that important? It is critical. And it's going to get really, really repetitive because all of these deal with elections, and therefore elections are all about democracy, right? So, like in the voter ID one, we said the same thing, that it's critical to democracy, right? So it's critical to democracy that voices are being heard. This you could even say it would increase um, turnout. All right. Oh, you know what? Let's save that one for voice of the people. Let's save that one for the next advantage. Let me show you. Advantage 2, turnout. This one is actually really easy. The harms is that turnout is low. Really easy to find sources on that, right? Like I don't even need to look it up. I know they exist for a fact. All right. Um, And Electoral College makes people feel like their vote doesn't matter. So, like, Republicans in blues, um, blue, blue states, Dems in red. So what I'm saying, you could probably find some easy testimonials. So testimonials are a different type of source, right? It's just like people's opinion and stuff like that. But in this case, that opinion is kind of what matters. All right. So the Republicans in blue states, I've had plenty of students that like say that they don't really care about voting in California. I teach in a fairly conservative county, and they're like, yeah, our vote doesn't matter. We know that it's going to go Democrats, so we're not going to vote. And so, and oh, under the and we'll get down to the impacts on why that matters. But you can have the testimonials of those people explaining themselves, right? I would really recommend doing both sides for that particular. It's like do some Republican testimonials and some Democrat testimonials, conservative, liberal, and anything in between. All right, and so. It feels like your vote matters more when you know that it will be counted. Like, because like if you are a Republican in California, basically your vote doesn't get counted for president. All right, and so that's really important for other things. The vote matters. This one could be analytical, or it could be a source. Maybe, yeah. I mean, I would probably go analytical on that one. Um, and if you're showing up late, then go back to the voter ID one. I explain what analytical means. It's just like making logical arguments without necessarily citing sources. So the impact of this one would be down ballot. Um, uh, so down ballot voting means that there are municipal and state elections that so what happens is that in municipal and state elections, it's like they're on the same ballot as the president, but people just want to vote for the president. That's their main shtick, right? And so when they go and they're like, "Oh, well, my vote doesn't matter, so I'm not going to vote at all." Well, that means they're also not voting for mayor. They're also not voting for their state representatives. They're also not voting on the propositions and things like that. And so that's the impact of low voter turnout, is that the municipal and the smaller ballot stuff also doesn't get their vote either. And so those things are important. All right. And so take a look at that. Now we got two advantages. Um, uh, oh, we got two advantages. I keep on doing that. Each advantage you want to see. I also want to clarify that each advantage has four parts, right? All you got to do is spend 30 seconds on harms, 30 seconds on inherency, 30 seconds. If you spend 30 seconds on each one of these, now you have a 2-minute position and you're filling up time. Filling up time is like the number one thing to do when you're starting to debate. Let's move on to felon voting rights. All right. Always have an attention getter. This one might be like there's only 3 states in the union that have, including Washington, D.C., that allow felons to vote. All the others have some form of voting rights, but a few of them don't. Felons are permanently disenfranchised from voting. Go ahead and steal that if you want to. Massage it out, make it work. All right. Interpretation. Here we go. Felon voting rights. Okay. So for the interpretation, we always have the type of resolution. Let's do the subpoint. Subpoint A is the type. Okay. Subpoint, and this is a policy. They are all policies. You can go back and take a look at them. But if you want to explain a little bit more, this one has should. Increasing anybody's rights requires legislation, right? Because if they don't have that right, if it's not identified in our current system, then they need to do something active about it. Then we're going to do definitions. Definitions. You are only going to define these words, not words later on in your speech. Only the words that are in this black cell right here. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Those 10 words are the only ones that should appear under section B of the interpretation. All right. So in this one, we're going to do we're going to group USFG, United States Federal Government, and that's just going to be an act of Congress. Increase felon voting rights. Okay, this is where you need to do a little bit of looking stuff up. All right, so let's do types of felon voting rights. Boom. NCL, National Conference of State Legislators. That seems cool. See these three places. They felons always have the right to vote. 21 is like they only lose it while incarcerated, automatically get it back once it's restored. In 16 states, during and for a period afterwards, all right? 11 states lose their voting rights indefinitely for some crimes or require governor's pardon in order to do it, all right? So take a look at those different, and they have a whole list down here. I'm not going to get into it. The point I'm trying to make is when you're talking about increasing felon voting rights, what you want to do is specify what level do you want to increase it to. Are you going to say that all felons now are going to have their voting rights, even when they are in prison? Or are they going to get it automatically restored upon release? Or are you going to, like, there's 11 states that don't allow, felons automatically after a period of time, like after probation or parole, right? And so you have that opportunity, that option to say, what level do you want to restore these rights to? And you can, and so any level is completely fine. So let's just pick one. I'm going to say automatically. So there's 21 states. All right. That means that there are 29 states. Well, there would be 28 states that don't do this, right? So I'm going to say, increase that means that they voting is reinstated. Okay, so you could do after parole. You could do even when they're in prison. I'm just choosing one of those levels. Okay, and so that would be an increase in felon voting rights. You could also go back to GovTrack and felon voting, disarming felons, vote resolution, right to vote act. Let's take a look at more. Like I like to go down to HR. Remember, this is govtrack.us, Voting Access Act, Right to Vote Act. Maybe it's this one. It just seems like, based on my search term and the title. So you could take a look at the text. You could do a really quick search. You do Control F. Nope. Graham Act, voting access, maybe vote at home, civic duty to vote. So one thing that might work. Huh. Well, this one doesn't necessarily require like legislation. Okay, so or doesn't require existing legislation. Stay in line to vote. No vote for non-citizens. Accessible voting. You must be alive to vote act. That's hilarious. Freedom to vote. John Lewis might be. Nope. All right. So I'm thinking that we just kind of keep this a little bit, a little loosey goosey here. There's state action. Okay. And so you would say, all right. And now when we get down to subpoint C, the plan is that USFG will So this is your plan. The United States federal government will make it illegal to do that. Now, there are some things in the plan you might want to explain in enforcement. All right, that that the law against there's a law against disenfranchisement. If you deny somebody the right to vote, that you will face a fine or a 1 year up in jail. All right, it is a misdemeanor, and so that is one way that you can do it. Okay, if and so anyone who does that, all right, and for every offense. Now, if there's like a Secretary of State that is disallowing thousands of people from doing it, that means that they are up for thousands of, um, uh, you know, infractions against this as well. See what I'm saying? So there you go. That was one way that you could do it. It's just like you say, like upon release from prison. Last thing, as always, have a criterion, right? And this is going to be your net benefits. I'm even going to just go to the previous one. I'm going to come up here. Actually, I'm going to go to voter ID. I'm going to say from here, net benefits. Boom. See, like this is, you don't need to reinvent the wheel every time. Okay. There you go. So, now you have that. Remember that first section right here, all the interpretation with all your definitions, your plan, and stuff like that. That's like your introduction. That should take about 1 minute. So then you do advantage one. Let's talk about reintegration. So harms. Felons have trouble reintegrating into society. I think this is easy to find a source, right? Now you could find any source that you want. Like let's just do felons reintegration. See, look, so commons, like I don't know, this is like some library right there, correctional reentry services. We could even do instead of felons, we could do felon reintegration. I could do that under news. Oh, even look at that. Even prisoners should get a like that might have exactly what you need for it, right? And so but it doesn't necessarily need to talk about voting, right? Um, changing parole for the better. So this one, I'm purposely choosing something that didn't necessarily say anything about voting because it's still relevant. That returning citizens still face barriers despite protective policies. So you could have any of this, and so like remember you could pick an excerpt from that. All I'm doing is putting the actual source right here. Um, but you can put anything about reintegration, all right? And so and then you talk about and it's actually good to do that where you talk about voting um, is and then you talk about see how I'm like really step by step going through these things. I'm like piecing it together. I'm creating a story, right? It's not like I just find everything that talks about felon voting rights and I just list them like a laundry list. I'm telling a story. I'm telling a story about reintegration, that there's trouble reintegrating, and then you connect it with how voting is a part of reintegration. And then you do your own research. You do your own research, okay, and find the source that supports that, and then solvency. So, um, voting helps the reintegration process. See that? And then you find a source. In fact, I do want to find a source on that one. Felon reintegration. Boom. Even prisoners deserve the right to vote. Okay, this one's good because the author is actually a former felon. Boom. I'd never forget the events of that day. After living in the country for 56 years, I would finally get what it meant to vote and participate in my community. I stood outside. So this is good. This is a nice personal testimony. That's awesome. I would copy and paste that and I put it right in there. Okay. And so wait, where is it? Boom. I'm gonna do there. Boom. So there's nothing wrong. You don't have to have every single source be a statistic, okay? It doesn't need to be some expert testimony. Like people that are involved, people that actually have something to say because they are on the inside of this, also have um, a really good voice on this one, impact. And so, so So we like the more that we rehabilitate people, the less of a strain that it puts on our prison system. And again, I want you to do your own research on that one, right? So is the more rehabilitation we have, the less punishment that there is, then there is less strain. All right. Um, uh, how about we talk about prison policies in this one? So we talk about how prisons don't really work. So like there might be like things like I want you to look up like things like private prisons, um, recidivism, and so you're talking about how our prison system is just kind of built to like keep people inside of the prison system, and so the inherency. Remember, this is the cause is that um, the prison policy is set by people who don't have experience with prison, right? And so and that's where you talk about voters. They just kind of assume that harsher sentencing works, right? And so they just vote for people that are kind of like, oh, I'm tough on crime. I'm going to throw more people in jail. But throwing more people in jail doesn't seem to like fix the problem. At the very best, it kind of like temporarily makes us forget about the problem by putting them off. But you can't leave someone in prison forever for certain crimes, right? Like some of these prison system, sentences are only a few years or a few months, and once they get out, now they are like harsher, hardened criminals, and so it actually creates more criminals that way. And so, like making it so that there are people that might have some insight on it, and guess who has insight? People who have been to prison. All right, so solvency. Um, so but now people with experience can influence that policy, and you might have some sources on that one. The impact might be a more sustainable, um, more sustainable prison system. What does that mean? So here's a good like maybe there's analogies from other countries that you can use. And that could be a type of research that you do. See that like I don't know. There's other places that their systems of incarceration have a very different philosophy, and they are able to accomplish significantly lower recidivism. And all you got to do is a really quick the best prison system in the world. Norway, most effective and humane in the world, does not incarceration. That's Wikipedia. Um, and now I would even do is like do Norway. No other rights are taken away. An offender in prison has the same rights as every other, including the right to vote. So now you might do a Norway analogy on how, like, like it can move us in the right direction. All right. So Norway um, might be a way of doing that. See how you're able to kind of like integrate these stories, kind of meld them together, use research from disparate areas, and create a solid single story. Not only that, but you could create multiple stories within a single speech. And now you have two advantages for that one as well. Okay, last couple of them. I think we'll be able to get this done within the next 30 to 45 minutes. Okay. All right. Again, here we go. Always start with an attention getter. So the attention getter in this situation might be a little bit more along the lines of who has ranked choice voting. And so I think it's Maine. So Maine has been using ranked choice voting, and I think it's time we do the same for our presidential elections. Um, Interpretation. So remember, you always start off with a type. This is a policy. Why is it a policy? Because it has the word should in it. It implies a policy. All right. Election procedures require legislation. All you're doing is explaining why. Oh, subpoint B. I forgot to put a subpoint A in front of type. Definitions. Okay. So ranked choice. Ranked choice voting. Now you can. I might recommend. I recommend actually looking this up a little bit. RCV, also known as instant runoff voting, improves fairness in elections by allowing users fair vote. No, let's not do that. Boom. I like that. Hello. I have somebody who's anonymous Nyan cat there. I hope I'm saying that right. Who's that? Is that somebody else? Okay. Lucky you. You get to be Nyan cat. All right. They rank them by preference on the ballot. So what does that mean? That, okay, right now, if you went and, I'm living in California, and if I go and I'm voting for governor, right? It's like I get to choose this person or that person or that person. In ranked choice voting, I would say this person is first, this person is second, and this person is third, in my opinion. Right? That's what ranked choice voting means. So instead of like like one or none, right? You get to kind of give them a number, and what happens is whoever gets the best rankings in the end, that's who wins. And so the ranked choice voting makes it so it's not just all or nothing. Okay, so that's what ranked choice voting means, and you probably during this section want to explain that a little bit more. All right. So here we go. Here we go. Ranked choice voting should be used for presidential elections. Got typos all over the place. So you could just clarify that you're talking about the president of the United States, not anything else, right? And so that sometimes is the I don't know. You might be thinking I'm being a little too cautious on this one, but this is debate. All right, you want to be very very clear. See, so the plan. Let's take a look and see if we have ranked choice voting. Voter Choice Act. Ooh, is that what I think it is? Making the transition to okay, so this is state and local governments, but the resolution is for the presidential election. So we don't have one that's specifically for the presidential election. And not only that, but yeah, I think you'd have to do, and so let's take a look at here it again. The problem. Daily Northwestern, um, Maine. Yeah. Uh, So, I'm just using so you could use Maine as a model, right? So sometimes when you're like, listen, I'm going to propose this thing. I'm going to use Maine as a model for ranked choice voting. This one you might want to have a time frame though. So time frame means when is this going to happen? So instead of 2024, let's say 2028 to give it enough time. Because enacting this within 2 years would be kind of it's a little sketchy. It's like just give yourself a little bit of time to do this one. All right. All right. So D, always criterion. You know what? I'm not even gonna write this. I'm just gonna go back. Here we are. Same thing. It's always the same. Okay. Net benefits. Let's do advantage one. Net benefits mean like just look, if the proposed plan produces more benefits than disadvantage, vote for us. If not, vote for the opposition. All right. One. Oh, this one is third party. Third party representation. So right now, uh, so uh, we have a two-party system dominates. I'm sure you could find a source on that one, right? Find the best source you can, not just any source, not your first source, but find any source that you can. Okay. So why is that? So let's see here. So third party funding. Oop, I put in thrid. Not an international third party. Uh, General election funding. Third party financing. So, public funding and presidential. So I'm looking. I'm so supplemental spending. Okay, so I think I'm looking at this. I'm seeing public grant for general election. A public grant. Okay. Sorry, I want to get this one a little bit more like locked in here. Primary matching funds. Okay. That might be I think that might be what it is. I wasn't able to primary only candidates seeking nomination by a political party office receive primary matching funds. Prejudice. So I think buried in some of this. Okay. A minor party candidate who is a nominee of a party can receive between 5 and 25% of the total in the preceding presidential election. The amount of public funding to which minor party candidate entitled to is based on the ratio of the popular vote preceding it. So take a look at that. So they can get public funding if they get more than 5% of a vote, right? And so the inherency is that major parties prevent third parties from public funding. Okay, and that is, and so this is where you got to find that 5%, right? So now, so what does that mean? That means on solvency is that when people are able to rank their parties, they could put their third party first, and then they could put one of the major parties second. Okay. Um, so that means that, and so the inherency is also that the the theory that you're throwing your vote away. So there's this assumption that if you are voting for a third party, you're throwing your vote away, right? And so what, even though many people want to vote for a third party, they more so want one of the major parties to crowd out the other major party they disagree with, and so they forego their personal preference in order to kind of like be, like be a team player. All right. So on the solvency, that means is that you're going to increase third party representation. And now you have a chance that it will go beyond the 5%. Okay. And they'll get public funding. So, and that'll help them in the future. So why is that important? Um, you can avoid political tribalism, you know what I mean, where people are like in their own little enclaves, or balkanization, or a lot of different ways that you could talk about how it's being fractured. All right. And maybe one of the, and so you could talk about how when people are allowed to sort of, there should be more nuance in the way that people have their represent their political opinions. There shouldn't be just two of them. Okay. There you go. Advantage two. We have the third party representation. Um, take a look here. So in so let's talk. I don't know. Let's give it a fun little thing. All right. Turning down the heat. So right now, the harms are that politics are getting heated. I bet you can find a source on that, right? That we are moving further and further apart. Why? Why is that? It's the us versus them mentality. There's some really interesting information about that. Um, so let's take a look really quick. And so So look, I'm going to say Americans are getting more divided. How politically divided is the U.S.? I'm going to avoid the Washington Post. Divided America. Maybe this one. So there we go. This one's not bad. More divided than ever. Diversity economy. Okay. So boom. See that? Boom. We just do us versus them. Um, so ranked choice voting gives more options. So it's not, so now we're not the assumption that we're just like in one camp or the other. There's many different camps. And when you show that through ranked choice voting, that helps. I think that would be more of an analytical. If you're just joining me, analytical means that you are making logical arguments without necessarily citing a source. Okay. So the impact could be lower temperatures mean less violence. Okay. And this one could also be analytical. It's like, listen, we are getting all worked up about stuff that should not be resulting in violence, but it is. All right. And that's where you could start talking about like January 6th. Like, I mean, that should not have resulted in violence. All right. There was an election. It was free and fair. Everyone, it's like you didn't like the results. That sucks. You know what I mean? But it shouldn't be resulting in an attempted sort of takeover of the election process and the violence and the people that died because of it. And so we need to turn down the temperature, let people make more choices, so there's not just an us them mentality. Okay. Turning down the heat. Look at that. Look at that. Again, if you're just joining me, each one of these advantages can take you 2 minutes, right? You take 30 seconds for each one of these little subpoints, and they're 4 subpoints each, therefore it equals 2 minutes. And that leaves you a minute to talk about all the definitions and stuff up top. All right. Last one, everybody. Thank you for sticking around this whole time. Let's do voting by mail. Okay. The attention getter. This one, I don't know. What would I say? I might say something like absentee voting has been around for a very, very long time, and it's getting more popular. It's time that we make it something that's available to more people overall. All right. So, as always, subpoint A is going to be your the debate type, and so that type is going to be a policy type of resolution. Why is it? Well, because the same reason all the others are policy, that should implies policy. And revising mail. Requires legislation. Okay, so B, we're going to do United States federal government. So these are definitions, right? So under the definitions, let's do USFG, United States federal government. That's going to be an act of Congress. Increase voting by mail is just make mail-in voting not more available to more. Make it to more available to more people than it is now. Let's see, this is where we can probably easily find a really nice plan. We should not do C is more than, we should just do this. And all right, so what is the plan going to be? Mail vote. MAIL, vote by mail tracking act. So here we go. We're going to do C more. I always like limiting it to just these so we don't get a whole bunch of roughage. Vote by mail tracking act, vote at home. Oh, vote at home act. I like going over the simple ones. It might not be the best. It might not be the best. Allow all eligible voters to vote by mail in federal elections to amend this to provide automatic voter registration for other purposes. Perfect. Boom, boom, boom. I'm just going to copy that. I'm just going to put that right here. I'm going to remove that formatting. Boom. Very nice. Oh, it still has a link to it. I love it. All right, so there we go. Vote at home. What the hell is this? Track. No, I don't want that actually. Okay, boom. Nice. Vote at home act. You can, all right, awesome. And so you could get more of the details by reading the full text. Let's see if there's, it is a little bit involved. Look at that. Okay. Okay. But you can take a look at those things. We're just gonna assume some facts for time's sake. All right. So as always, the criterion is just going to be net benefits. All right. No need to reinvent the wheel. See this? All right, good. Voter turnout. Look at this. This one is very similar to what we had. Where was it? Is it this one? No. Voter turnout. Let's do the Electoral College. Voice of the people. Turnout. Look at that. Okay, so watch this. You listen. All these things are about elections, right? So let's I mean, screw it. Let's just not let's just use the same stuff. The only thing is turnout is low. You can have the same source. This is the only thing you have to change, the inherency. So what is causing it? So barriers to in-person voting. So, and this one is no longer about Republicans in blue states or anything like that. What this is like, I don't know, time off work transportation, especially in rural areas. That would be great to have stuff like that, right? So here we go. Popular vote means vote matters. Okay, so why would this solve is like voting from home is becoming popular. I would not do analytical. I would do a source. Like the amount of people that are voting from home is just increasing, but the impact could be absolutely the same. That down ballot voting is really important for this stuff. Take a look. We just kind of repurpose that. Notice how, man, do that as much as you can in debate. Take information and repurpose it for other things. All right. Let me see if I could do this last advantage as quickly as possible. All right. Nope, nope, nope. Advantage 2. Now let's do health. This one's great. All right. Harms. Um, uh, uh, People are getting sick right now. All right. It's like it's the season for it, and you have a source. You talk about how COVID isn't over, people. Okay, you can have all that stuff. People are getting sick, stuff like that. Okay, inherency. Why? What does this have to do with voting? Well, polling places are potential vectors. Not illness, for infection. Okay, it's like you have people standing in line. What? You have to go inside where you don't have a whole lot of airflow and stuff like that. Each one of those could have its own source, right? Solvency, uh, voting from home reduces infection. We even have an example from the 2020 elections. Impact. Now, you're going to save lives. You can have a source that estimates how many lives. See that? Look at that. That's an easy one. That's an easy one. I really like that one. Okay. It makes it easy to do and everything like that. And now what you can do is you can really easily go point by point and like spend the time that it, that you want on each one, and now you decrease the chance that you are repeating yourself too much. You increase the ability to research from a variety of sources and having and it makes it easier for you to think of things to research, because oftentimes when you're given something like vote by mail, all you do is go vote by mail into Google and you're like, well, I only found 3 articles. I'm like, man, you can really easily find, look, if you want to find a source that COVID isn't over, it doesn't have to say anything about elections or about voting. And now it's a source, you know what I mean? And like you have a source citation in there, makes you seem smarter. It takes up more time. You can copy and paste the stuff from the article itself, and it makes it, makes it really easy to fill your time. And this is a 5-minute speech. Okay. So fill that 5 minutes, use those resources. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. As you can see, all these things are really easy to lay out. Please, if you have any questions, post it up in the comments. If you got any suggestions or anything like that, let anybody else know about it. But that is my advice on how to do these election related topics. And you have it so that it's all lined out. Don't forget to like number your arguments. Okay. So when you're like advantage 2, health, first, the harms, people are getting sick. My first source is this. My second source is that. And you fill it in, right? Second, inherency. Polling places are in potential vectors for infection. 1, people are standing in line. 2, cramped or indoor spaces, and you source out those things as well. Third, solvency. Voting from home reduces. Like, I know it sounds really robotic, all right? It sounds really mechanical, but I promise you, in the long run, it really, really helps. Debates need to be bullet pointed more than a normal speech does, okay? Because you need to make it memorable, something easily referred to when you get to rebuttals. Remember, this is just one speech. You're going to have there's going to be a negative speech, a rebuttal, and a rebuttal. There's 5 speeches in this debate, and by the time you get to this last rebuttal right here, you want to be referring back to, I want you to remember my first advantage. Remember my harms. I told you that turnout was low. They didn't respond to this. So that's why you're bullet pointing now, not because it sounds good now, but because it makes it a lot easier to refer to it in the 5th speech when you need to, and you don't have a whole hell of a lot of time. Okay. So you're kind of future proofing it, making it memorable for your judge. All right. Listen, don't hesitate to contact me, leave a comment, ask me for any other advice. I'd love to help out. Okay. So if there's anything that you think would help as far as the strategy goes, post up your research in the comments, post up strategies or ideas for arguments. I would love to hear it. All right. All right, everyone. I'll see you later.